26-minute mark. The good news is weather's looking good. You can see the blue skies there on the camera views from the drone. The only thing we're watching is winds. They are within limits at ground level. We expect they may pick up a little bit as we get farther into the window should we need to go that far. But the good news right now is that the weather is looking good. The range also is looking pretty good. We've moved almost all the boats out of the keep out zone overnight. We are working one, but we're still underway. Cool. And right now, as a reminder, if for any reason we do not make our test flight today, we have backup launch windows. This could be either 24 or 48 hours after today, and it'll depend on how far we get into the countdown. But it coming up on 25 minutes to go, everything is looking good, Kate.
In order to make life multiplanetary, we need a fully reusable vehicle that's capable of carrying a huge amount of cargo and a lot of people to orbit and have a pretty quick turnaround. The idea is to effectively reuse launch vehicles just like airplanes.
What the fuck?
Crowd is getting excited here in Hawthorne behind mission control, as you can hear. Now, imagine if you had to wait for a new airplane to be constructed every time you wanted to fly. You'd rarely go anywhere, and it would probably be completely
That's what they got the
unaffordable for
Falcon
most
9
of us.
for, though, right?
In order for us to get to Mars and back with lots of people, multiple times, reusability is a must.
Now, in the near term and a bit closer to home here on Earth, Starship
There's
will be
no
critical
way
to
this
other
is gonna be
programs
used
as
to
well.
get to Mars.
Once it's operational,
No fucking
Starship
way.
will deliver the full-size and upgraded version of our Starlink satellites. And that's super exciting because our next generation satellites represent a step forward in Starlink's capabilities and will provide more bandwidth and increased reliability
started on ship
to connect millions of people around the world with high-speed internet.
Yeah,
And of course, Starship will fly
happy
a
about
number of
that.
human spaceflight missions in the lead up to our first missions to Mars. Entrepreneur and pilot Jared Isaacman will command the first human spaceflight on Starship as part of the Polaris program.
When
Jared
is
served
that?
as a commander
Starship?
for Inspiration 4, the first all-civilian mission to orbit. Inspiration 4 launched aboard our Dragon spacecraft and Falcon 9 in September 2021, raising over $240 million for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. The first human spaceflight on Starship will launch as part of the Polaris program, and you can learn more about that series of missions at
Heavy lift
polarisprogram.com.
rocket, BFR,
Now,
low
our
Earth
first
orbit.
lunar mission around the moon aboard Starship will be led by Japanese entrepreneur Yusaku Maezawa, also known as MZ.
No way that that's
MZ
gonna
flew
be
to space for the first time in December 2021, purchasing
what
and
we
he
used to get to
purchased
Mars.
all of the seats aboard Starship's first lunar mission in order to give artists
My
and
opinion.
creators from all over the world the
But what do I
opportunity to go. And the hope is that what they will create in space will further inspire all of us here back on planet Earth. Now, over 1 million people applied for this mission, and earlier this year, they announced the final 8 crew members were selected.
So we have a
and you
test
can learn
launch
more
for
about
April.
them and MZ's
Okay,
mission
that's where we are.
at dearmoon.earth.
Dennis and
So it's
Akiko
the first
Tito are
orbital
the
test
first
flight.
2 crew members announced to fly on Starship's second commercial spaceflight around the moon.
It will not be
This will be
recovered
Dennis's
for that
second
flight.
mission
That's
to
what they
space
said.
after
It's gonna
becoming the first
drop into the
commercial
ocean.
astronaut to visit
Hard
the
water
International
landing,
Space Station
I believe
in
it's what it's called.
2001. And Akiko will be among the first women to fly around the moon on a Starship. The Titos joined the mission to contribute to
softly
SpaceX's
land
long-term goal
around
to
100
advance
miles
human
northwest of
spaceflight and help make life
Hawaii.
multiplanetary.
In the
SpaceX
Hawaiian
is also
Islands.
incredibly honored to be part of NASA's Artemis program
Space
to
flight is
establish
going to
a
last
sustainable
90
presence
minutes,
on
make
the
one
moon
revolution
to prepare for
around
missions to
Earth.
Mars. Starship's early test launches, followed by those regular Starlink deployment missions and propellant transfer demonstrations, are directly advancing NASA's Artemis program, along with SpaceX's ongoing mission to make life multiplanetary.
SpaceX will conduct an uncrewed demonstration mission to the moon prior to the Artemis 3 mission, which will mark humanity's first return to the lunar surface in more than 50 years. It's an exciting future, but let's talk a little about how we got to today.
Now, Starship testing
No
ramped
way.
up in July of 2019 with the Star Hopper prototype. It's sort of a short version of the Starship that we see today. There's a picture of it on your screen. The
I've seen
lovable
those
water
test
tower.
flights. They're actually
Now,
pretty funny.
standing at just
Looks
over
wacky,
18
like
meters
Kerbal Space
tall,
Program.
the Star Hopper had a single engine and was test flown to perform landing and low-level altitude maneuvers. Starship's initial flight test was a hop that reached about 20 meters in altitude. This was followed by a second hop, the one that we've got on our screen, that rose to 150 meters in altitude. We took a little jaunt away from the launch pad and ended up landing about 100 meters or so further away from it, and you can see that on your screen. Now, notably, this was the first time that we had used a Raptor engine in flight and demonstrated control of this kind.
As a Star Wars fan, I can't not see a flying R2-D2 there. Now, after a series of 150-meter hop tests with earlier prototypes, the Starship program saw a huge breakthrough during a test flight of the vehicle known as serial number 8, or SN8. SN8 demonstrated a first-of-its-kind controlled aerodynamic descent and landing flip maneuver. Yes, I'm talking about the belly flop. This 12.5-kilometer hop test took place December 2020 and saw the SN8 prototype ascend to an altitude of 12.5 kilometers and conduct a belly flop.
It may have been another one.
While it didn't stick the landing, the test was a major milestone in the development of Starship.
I love seeing the belly flop maneuver. Now, testing continued with the prototype on serial number 9. That was a 10-kilometer flight test in February of 2021. We had a nominal ascent, engine cutoff, reorientation, and controlled descent were stable. However, we unfortunately had a dramatic ending to the end of that flight when we had a failure on its engine to relight. That resulted in one of those rapid unscheduled disassemblies. But what was really, really exciting about both serial numbers 8 and 9 is how quickly we were able to achieve just our primary objectives in those two high-altitude test flights. In addition to getting lots of great data, Starship successfully demonstrated control of the vehicle and subsonic re-entry capability.
Ultimately, we performed 9 Starship high-altitude test flights in total, and in May of 2021, SN15 launched from Starbase, reached an altitude of about 10 kilometers, performed a number of maneuvers, and safely returned to the launch site. This was the first Starship prototype to fly, control its descent, safely land, and to be recovered in one piece.
So
now, having achieved that success in our suborbital campaign, one of the next big challenges for upper stage reusability is to survive the high heating hypersonic phase of entry. Combined with the ability to refill our Starship's tank with fuel and oxygen while on orbit is what will enable a fully reusable transportation system that's designed to carry both crew and cargo on these long-duration interplanetary flights, and that's ultimately what will help humanity return to the moon and travel to Mars and beyond in our solar system.
So Falcon 9 looks like they have to rebuild a few things.
Nothing but
this
an
is supposed to be
process
completely reusable
to get to the point that we are today and where we will go from here. That iteration is a core process of how we work here at SpaceX. We like to fly and we like to test early and often, both on the side of hardware and software.
Yeah, that's an awesome point, Kate. Now, we are continuing our countdown to Starship liftoff just over 17 minutes from now. So, of course, let's check in with John for another status update. John?
Thanks, Shiva. Clock is coming up on T-minus 17 minutes from liftoff. We're continuing to click towards 0. However, right now, we've just begun listening in. The first stage team is working a pressurization issue. They're troubleshooting that right now. Now, we do have the option, if need be, if we can't solve this, then we would hold the count and probably treat today as a wet dress and not be able to launch. However, we are continuing to do propellant loading on both the Super Heavy and the ship stages.
All right, so they have a pressure
Most recently, we began loading liquid oxygen and methane fuel into the header tanks on Starship. At the very top, just underneath the nose there are 2 small spherical tanks. That's where the fuel and liquid oxygen header tanks are. That started at T-minus 27 minutes, and that propellant loading will continue until T-minus 9 minutes. We'll also continue loading the main tanks of the Starship second stage, although they're pretty much full right now. Everything will drain back as we get ready for launch at T-minus 5 minutes. Now, on the first stage, we're continuing to load the massive amount of propellant onto the Super Heavy booster. That's going to continue until T-minus 3 minutes. You can see the frost line on some of the views as both liquid methane and liquid oxygen go into the tank. It's 16 minutes and counting. We're also currently configuring the launch pad for liftoff. The booster hold downs are being prepared for the release at liftoff, and the second stage quick disconnect is beginning its configuration for release. The liquid oxygen and methane that are going into the second stage go through that quick disconnect. You can see it in some of the views, the arm that comes out just to the base of the second stage. Now it'll move out of the way as we lift off. At the same time, the SpaceX team continues to check in with the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
We're working one boat that's in the safety perimeter. They are working to get that boat out of the way. We cleared several other boats out overnight. We're down to one, and we expect that'll be clear so that we can proceed with launch out over the Gulf of Mexico.
How high they are.
But as a reminder, T-minus 15 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. We are working an issue on the first stage, and we'll bring an update as we get more insight into that issue.
Now, today's test flight is taking place out of our Starbase facility in South Texas, and that facility has gone through a tremendous amount of change and growth in a really short period of time.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years ago, not much even existed there. It was a very different scene, as you can see by that photo there on your screen.
There.
Fast forward to today, and the team is building out an entire production line.
Yeah, last year they built 4 Starship Super Heavy boosters, 5 Starships, our 200 Raptor 2 engine, and this year they're targeting 5 boosters, 8 Starships in production for 2023. And really, you do need a production system to rapidly iterate, like we were talking about earlier, on the design of the vehicle as we learn more about it from these large tests.
Yeah, absolutely. Pulling on my industrial engineering background, system fill is something that is critical to that goal. Being able to produce and launch multiple Starships means that we have to have a system full of those production vehicles, and we iterate on each one.
Sure.
So even the next Starship that will fly in whatever the next test is will be different than the one that you see there on your screen now.
Now, the employees who have been at SpaceX a while say that Starbase does remind them of the early Falcon 1 days, except moving a whole lot faster.
The team at Starbase is expanding as fast as the facilities
Supposedly
are.
it's going to be easier to
ever wondered what life at Starbase is like,
or
there's a
cheaper,
quick peek.
Cheaper than the Falcon 9 anyway. That is so insane. It's impressive. Add Astra to the stars. Shit, I need to work down there. I don't think it's gonna launch today, though. They're having pressure problems, they said. Like 10 minutes out, nearly. No way. It's gonna get scrubbed.
Starbase directly employs more than 1,800 employees and is actually the largest employer in the area.
Yeah, and from that video, you can really tell, like, it's a beautiful location. It's close to the ocean. There's tons of wildlife. And that's because being close to the equator is actually a fantastic way to get to orbit.
Yeah, I love that we have so many employee events that allow us to participate with ocean cleanup and other environmental efforts there. We'd also like to thank Cameron County for being so supportive for all of our work in that area. Now, in addition to Starbase, we'll soon be adding another Texas location to the SpaceX family. We're opening a new facility in Bastrop, Texas, just outside of Austin, to support Starlink hardware production.
Huh.
The new facility will be over 500,000
I hate
square
Starlink.
feet of manufacturing
Not a fan.
space, and the team has already started hiring.
Now we have all kinds of openings in production and manufacturing for technicians and leadership and manufacturing engineers and all kinds of site support roles. Basically, if you can think of a role, we're probably hiring for it.
So if you're interested in helping expand human life to other planets or helping internet access here on Earth, consider becoming part of the SpaceX team at spacex.com/careers. Now, with that, let's check back in with Zach down at Starbase one last time before launch. Howdy, Zach.
I don't think so.
Hello, Kate and Shiva again. You can really feel the energy here at South Padre Island as more of the SpaceX team have gathered. We're standing just over 5 miles away from the launch mount, and so from here we've got a very nice view. I would basically say these are some of the best front row seats you could get, and might I add, beachside as well. Now, the Starship team has worked incredibly hard to get ready for this test, and we're all clearly excited for T0. And as we get into the final moments, one issue that could hold the countdown or cancel the test altogether is if a boat enters the safety perimeter. Now, over my shoulder is the Gulf of Mexico, which is normally very open to all of the boaters and fishers. However, today, SpaceX is closely coordinating with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safe zone and ensure public safety. And up to T0, SpaceX is in regular communication with the Coast Guard to ensure there are no boats in the area leading up to the launch. Now, fingers crossed that does not happen. Now, I'll throw it back to the folks at Hawthorne as we get closer and closer to that T-0.
That won't be the problem. Their pressure situation will.
We're just inside T-minus 9 minutes and counting.
What they're saying.
We're listening on one of the background loops right now. Flight director is talking about the issue we've had on first stage, working the pressurization system. Decision right now is that we are going to stop the launch for today. We're going to transition the launch attempt to a wet dress rehearsal. So that means we're going to continue with the countdown sequence of events. We'll continue loading propellant, finishing up here shortly on the second stage. We'll also continue loading propellant onto the first stage, wrapping up at T-minus 3 minutes. We're also going to go through pressurization steps, other steps of the countdown. This will be a full validation for the team, but currently the plan right now is we're waiting for final word, is that I think at T-minus 10 seconds, we will finally stop the clock and then recycle the countdown for today. Now we're inside T-minus 8 minutes and counting.
I'm going to log then.
We're continuing to load propellant on both the first and second stage. You can see the